Hey, what's going on? Coach Hapa here. Welcome to Coffee with the DJ Coach. These are 10-minute talks to help you level up. We are very excited to be able to tackle a question from a community member of ours. This is a great question that came in from Hicks. Shout out to Coach Bryy, who's here as well, listening in on all of this. You there, Coach Bryy?
I'm right here.
Nice. Okay, so here's the question from Hicks. How do I know what past songs will the crowd like if I play them? That's number one. That's the first question. And then the second question is, how do I know when to switch the genres? Both really good questions. And this falls under a category that I like to call programming. So programming, I define as what you play and the order in which you play it. And really more importantly, how appropriate these songs and this, collection of music that you're playing fits with what it is that you're trying to do. Right. So I think it's really helpful for us to also keep in mind that there are different types of gigs and there's different types of objectives. Right. I think like for Coach Bryy and I, we've definitely both been there where the objective is not getting people to dance. In fact, believe it or not, there's actually venues here in LA that they forbid dancing. It's like the what's that film, Dirty Dancing? Because in order to have a dance floor, you need to have a different license. And so there are venues which do not carry what is often referred to as this burlesque license. And some of that is, a bit of a legacy thing. And it's a way that the city can charge more money and get somebody to pay for another license. So anyways, sometimes the objective is not to get people to dance. Sometimes the objective is just to be able to create a dope vibe and be able to get people bobbing their heads and kind of wondering to themselves, like, what song is this? Or, wow, like this is a really great version of this track. Or it just sort of adds to the overall ambiance of, the conversation that they're having with friends or coworkers or on a date or whatnot. So sometimes that's the objective. Other times the objective is to keep the dance floor going, right? Or to get the dance floor going. And I think as a DJ, it's really important to understand that. In my library, in my DJ library, I actually have two prominent sections. I have a section that is vibe, and then I have a section that is floor. So vibe it's actually a smart crate or a collection of smart crates that's really about just creating that vibe like I were talking about before. And then floor is all stuff that, is really meant for a dance floor. Now, it's not genre specific either in those categories, right? Because when it comes to vibe, that might be, a really cool Biggie track that could also be, a like a dope Oliver track that's kind of like indie electronic music, or, it could be a James Taylor record or a Fuji song or, whatever. It could be anything. It could be like an R&B track, like a Brandy track or something like that. And then in terms of floor, same thing. Like that isn't necessarily dependent on the genre. So I might have a Pitbull song in there, or I might have a Michael Jackson song or a Bruno Mars track or, whomever, right? A Drake song, a Kendrick song. So for me, a lot of times when I'm organizing my music, I'm really trying to think, what category does this fit into? Which one of these two categories do I think this fits into? Is this more of something I would use when creating a vibe, or more something I would use when trying to get a dance floor going? So that's number one, of like trying to think of music in that way. I think the second thing that I'll say here is when it comes to older music, and this is great that I've got Coach Bryy here because I'm just going to kind of tap into this. Bryy, do you remember this maybe a couple months ago, there was a gig that I had you guys out on that was like a 90s, was it like 90s, 80s and 90s music?
Yes.
Yeah.
90s,
And Coach Bryy, I don't want to, look, I'm just going to put this out here. Like you were born in the 90s. So you don't have the same context. I mean, I was kind of partying in the 90s, so I'm a bit older than Coach Bryy. So, how do you know which songs are like the songs? And some of that could come from looking at Billboard charts and like going back in time and looking for, the top songs of 1995, the top songs of 1997, right? And like trying to figure that out based on that. But that's really only to give you a portion of the story. So here's my best advice to anybody who's especially a newer DJ or somebody who's maybe a younger DJ or just in general. I mean, like, look, even for me as an older DJ, like I tap into resources all the time. And what I'm going to say to you is get a friend, like befriend another DJ, because there are going to be songs that I put Coach Bryy on, or I put you on, or I put somebody else on that is maybe not a super obvious track that wouldn't necessarily show up on a Billboard chart if you were to go back into time, or you would have kind of glanced over and you wouldn't necessarily know when to play that. So I vividly remember that, Bryy, because that party that you did, I remember we were going through some music, and there was at this party you were doing, there was a part of the party that was more people like vibe, chilling out, having drinks, sipping on wine, and then, more time like reserved for let's party, right? And I remember you were asking me this song, where do you think this song would fit? And even though it was maybe lower BPM, I think one of the songs was like Mark Morrison, Return of the Mac. And it's like, that's a party song. Even though it doesn't sound necessarily like it would be because it's more of a mid-tempo R&B song, like people love that record and will sing along to it, and that will work on a dance floor. And so, yeah, I think making sure that you have a DJ friend, and you can never have enough DJ friends. Let's just put that out there. Am I right, Coach Bryy? You can never have enough DJ friends.
Yep. Right.
Because everybody has their own sort of knowledge and expertise. So, for instance, there's maybe a time where, Coach Bryy knows a lot more about Latin music than I do. He has a lot more of the Latin genres down, has a little bit more context for some of those tracks. So there may be times where maybe I'm asked to do an event and they really want to lean heavy on the Latin side of things. Well, this is a great opportunity for me to tap into some of my DJ friends. And I could use some of my own knowledge, of course, but then, to really ask people, like, do not be afraid to ask somebody. And by the way, that's how you establish a deeper relationship with another DJ, and it means something. I think everybody likes to be able to, most people like to be able to share their wisdom and their knowledge with somebody else. And I think what you'll find, especially if you are a newer DJ, you'll find that this community is really inclusive. And as a whole, DJs want to help other DJs. Every now and then you'll find that one DJ who's just insecure. I'll put it that way. And is afraid that you might take his or her job. And that's not the person for you then. Just don't be offended by it. Don't take it personal. Thanks anyways, and move on and find the person that is open and willing to help you. Okay, the last thing I'll say about this is the second question was, how do I know when to switch the genres? And I would argue that it's not only just the genres, but sometimes the tempo as well, and sometimes the energy as well. And all three of those things can be independent. So, you might actually stay at the same tempo, stay at the same BPM, but switch the genre. Or you might keep the genre, but change the tempo. Right? Like we still might be on some, like electronic vibes, but be able to switch to a different BPM. Or energy wise, like we could be playing the same genre, about the same tempo range as well, but change the energy. Maybe we're a little bit lower in energy and want to kick it up a notch. That sometimes doesn't mean faster BPM. In fact, one of the things that you will hear sometimes as a DJ, somebody will come up to you and be like, can we bring it up a bit? And what they might mean volume, so it's good to specify. They might mean volume, but what they probably mean is energy. Like they want to bring the energy up, which doesn't necessarily mean bring the tempo up. So how do you know? You know by paying attention, by watching. So I think a lot of times there's not enough time that I see DJs spending reading a crowd. You're too focused on what's happening in your laptop or what's happening on your controller, as opposed to paying attention and actively listening, not just with your ears, but with your eyes as well, to what's going on in the audience. And they will let you know, non-verbally most times. They will let you know by their body language, and you'll sort of have an intuition of when it's time to switch it up, which we could get into a whole other thing on reading a crowd, and maybe we will. Maybe that's a future episode. But I want to thank you guys for being here. Make sure to rate and review the podcast. Also, we've got a ton of content on our different channels. Make sure to follow all those channels. We've got links below in the description of this podcast, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Coach Bryy.